Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Dream Labs. I am Dr. Contrast, and it's good to be back on board here. I just want to be sure that we get this thing organized here today. And for the purposes of just review, it's been about 2-3 weeks since I've been back on the stream. Thanksgiving got in the way, obviously. That was a holiday we came up with and had to take care of. But the other element that caused some difficulty last week was I'll review later on in the program here, just a very tragic set of circumstances that did not allow me to go on live last Wednesday. So because of that absence, what I thought I'd do today is just bring us up to speed on where we are with this HS-108P prototype attack vehicle that was once called the Mocharon, but we made some changes to it, and I think you'll find out that then throughout the course of this program in review for me, at any rate, that we made some real progress in getting it back up to what it should look like as far as an attack vehicle is concerned. So I'm going to take a moment here to go through some review things, and near the end of the program, if you're still with me, I just want to pay tribute to an extremely difficult situation we experienced last week. Lost a very dear, very, very dear friend. I want to take a moment to make a moment of comment and tribute to him before we wrap up the stream today. So let's get started with this thing. This goes back about, I'd say about maybe 6 to 8 months ago. I started a program called the Mocharon, which is a generic term, the species name for the hammerhead shark. And I thought, well, it'd be kind of neat to do a little situation where you have a biomimicry program where you actually take the shark and develop it into a intermediate attack vehicle for a Star Citizen series. And so I started doing some sketches, and I thought I'd bring it back on review here and show you where we were in the past, and then bring it up to speed with what we've done more recently here. So this is the actual some of the history of. I won't go through an awful lot of it, but just for review purposes, gone back and looked at where we were when we started this whole program, and it was basically just looking at the side elevation, for example, of the actual hammerhead, body form, very fluid, very soft and organic, and also with this very feature with the iPod or the eye platform hammerhead. Doing a little bit of section study of front elevation. Again, another one, and another little gesture here. And then down to the base of this thing, maybe looking at a very simple little translation about body form and getting the shapes down and to move it into an attack aircraft. Well, the more and more I looked at this thing, after I went through the whole process, I'll show you in a moment what the final resolution was for the original Mocharon, or HS-108P, and you'll see some transition changes. And what caused me to go back to it was very simple. I looked at the final study and I said, it just doesn't look attack-like. It's just too soft. It's too generic. Yeah, it had some of the organic feel that the hammerhead shark has, but it didn't have that really kind of futuristic, intimidating look to it. So I went back in and did some concept studies here. Let me just get them out of the way here, and we'll go down the line. So I went back in, looked at some of the early sketches from that empathic study, and again, trying to follow that same, that same kind of gesture down here, and put it back into the actual sketch itself. So I went through some pencil sketches on just an elevation, maybe a front elevation, to take a look and notice that same shape is almost there. Again, a little bit too organic, but again, it's a start. And I went back through that one, and then from that shape went into this shape, trying to get this double pontoon thing out here. Again, elevation a little bit crisper, but not quite where it needed to be as far as an attack vehicle is concerned. So it's just interesting how going through the genealogy of this thing, after looking at some of the sketches from a year or 8 months ago, it just dawned on me that all of a sudden it just didn't have that same that super character that we're after as far as a very really mean-looking attack vehicle. So and that was another little pencil study going through the process. And by the way, I think going through the original concept, I think I must have generated close to 100 plus sketches, just going through the variations on theme, making changes in the plan view, the elevations and section studies. So this is just a real brief history of where we are with that program in terms of then. What happened was I went back after that last sketch I just showed you, went back to some of the later histrionics of putting some of the plan view stuff together, and I thought, this had an interesting character to it, because all of a sudden it had that same organic look up front, but a little crisper in the back, almost diamond-like and almost triangular shape, and it looked like an interesting set of formats there to work with here. So but before I go any further with that, let's go back to the original concept here. Sorry for the jumping back and forth here. But when it was all said and done, this was the final study that was done for the Mocharon. I mean, it was interesting based on some of these sketches we've done in the past. For example, these guys and some of the ones we've done in the past here. Let me go back to this initial a look here. It had, that was the initial empathy study here to kind of put it all together. But notice it was there, but had some of the characteristics of the actual hammerhead itself, with that very long nose and around, but very slim looking, but a bit too soft. And I went back and looked at this final sketch that I put together with notes on it. I was going to go back and do a finished rendering of this thing to put on my website. And I just looked at it and said, it just doesn't have that same impact to it. It just doesn't look gutty enough. There's just something about it that's just too soft and not aggressive enough. So I just want to bring that back to your memory here. This is the actual final study for the original Mocharon study. Now we switch gears to the HS, or Hammerhead Shark 108 prototype. So I'm going to put this aside and get it out of the way and go a little further. So from that generation, I went back in some of the early history of some of the plan view studies and some of the perspective work I did, and I found this to be very, very a bit rewarding. There's an interesting plan view here, still a bit too soft in some areas, but it had some character about it back and through here that really looked pretty potential to work with here. So this plan view study started a series of sketches that went back into this. For example, I moved back in. Notice some of the original Mocharon, a very soft, kind of a little harder body form and section into it, but a higher cockpit and so forth, engine systems and the gunnery systems. But it had a little bit more of an attack mode to it than the initial sketch that I showed you earlier. So that was one little pencil study I put together based on that plan view change we just showed you. And then from that sketch went into this, another plan view of this, saying, okay, what are we doing here? Maybe it's a little bit too elaborate. Then it has a little bit of hammerhead look to it, but it just still looked a bit too busy. So I thought, well, let's go back and maybe revise that just a bit here. And then from that study, I went to this one, where I started to get a little bit more organic, or a little more stealth-like, a little more evil-looking in terms of shape and form. And what struck me about this sketch was all of a sudden it looked like I was getting into a blended wing system, where obviously this comes off that body form, still a bit too soft in here yet, but again, that body form with a single wing system here, and a little bit more of just a very subtle implication of that hammerhead ice platform that the actual shark has. So this was a big help to kind of look at this and get that squared away. And once I saw this, I went back and said, okay, let's go back and look at some of these guys. Now, from that sketch, I'm going to bring another sketch in here, stack of studies, and we'll look at these guys as we go down the line here. From that last sketch, which is this one here, this little thumbnail study, and this one right here, all of a sudden started to tell me a real neat story about, okay, now we're getting somewhere, but it has to be a lot crisper. So I went from that back to this, and then again, here's another little perspective study. Notice still a bit of the hammerhead look to it, very soft, the little platform down below that had the gunnery system involved in it, and the munition system. It looked pretty good. Elevations, to me, started to look interesting, but still too soft. But there was something about this wing system here that started to dictate what was happening in this section here, rounding it off, but at the same time, that section looked like it might go a little crisper with it. So that was interesting to kind of keep that in the fold here. So that was part of the next development sketch that we worked on, this HS New System 108. And now we got into something I think that really started to kick. From that study here, this was very soft look. Basic architecture was there, some neat things happening, but again, still too organic from my liking and not stealthy enough. So I went back to that and just came up on board with this beauty and said, all right, now this has started to take on some real shape. All of a sudden, notice how the whole architecture changed. So I would go back again. This is what I really wanted to accomplish here. It was neat to kind of see what was going on in terms of, notice, much more, a lot crisper, blended wing coming off the body form itself and creating this upper wing, and it turned into a really neat, interesting two-tier system, which I'll show you in a moment here. So I want to put this sketch aside. This became the theme sketch for the revision study we're going to work on today, and show you today, and then hopefully pick it up after the holidays and finish some really interesting, nice finished rendering here. Notice there was an upper wing and a lower wing platform that kind of gave it a split wing, a blended wing look up on top, but a split wing underneath it to get more of an evil look to it as far as content is concerned. So I'm going to put that aside for a moment here and keep that. There's another elevation. Here's what I was getting at in terms of that whole shape. Again, notice a lot meaner looking in terms of the elevation. I mean, this started to take on some real character. Interesting in terms of looking at it in terms of really cool stuff. So all of a sudden that started to take on some personality. Big help. Now the elevation was interesting too. Notice a lot sharper, a lot more triangular, almost polar triangular like in essence, and I think that's what was really kind of helpful here. And this is that blended wing coming off the upper body form. That blended wing comes out and forms another, and the venturi underneath this is a secondary wing. There's the intake for the engine systems and also a munition system on the end cap, which is reflected up here. So all of a sudden, pieces started to come together much more fluidly, and it really had some really interesting things to kind of deal with here. So that was another line study. And then I switched gears and went, okay, what does this thing look like in a 1-point perspective? Notice again, here's that blended wing system up on top. This is the lower wing below with the munition systems, and again, a lot more of a stealthy look in terms of attack vehicle munitions on the upward side. And then that nose cap piece, it was really interesting in terms of, it had some real character to it. Notice a big difference, I think, between that and this guy here. Let me bring this back for a moment. Look at the difference in that form, which was a start, to what we've done here, which is a real step forward, I believe. So we're making some progress here. So that was a little 1-point study. So I took that line drawing and began to move it into a little theme study here in terms of, all right, what are we doing as far as, notice that again, a little bit of tone to it, very sheer, very organic looking. Again, this whole upper wing, this whole piece here, let me just tone this in. This piece is a floater above that lower piece. So this is above blended wing, and that's a wing structure below it. So really interesting, I think. Finally, a good, really swift looking HS-108P that looks like it's much more intimidating and far more of an attack vehicle. So that was that. And now this is the final line drawing. This was a concept sketch a few moments ago. That put the form together based on some of this we were showing you here. And then all of a sudden this one came to life, and man, all of a sudden that really had some real character to it. I think it's got the right scale, it's got the right character. It implies a little bit of Mokaran, has that gunning munition system up front, where the hammerhead has that little platform where the eyes are located. So it's starting to put together the mimicry piece that I was really looking for in the very beginning. And above all else, much more energetic, much more intimidating, evil looking. I notice again, blended wing coming off that body section, very triangular, comes right down off of that wing, then the lower wing and the intake and so forth underneath it. So once I got to that stage of the game, I'll put that right there. We'll come back to that in a moment. Remembrance sake, review. And once I had that in place, I went back and looked at maybe some additional plan view sketches, real quick little pencil sketches here to kind of put it all together for us. Is it going to be more of this look? Do we want to push all this forward? That was front of the vehicle. All that should have been pushed forward, which is starting to show you here. Then this one started at me too. This is that whole start of that blended wing look here, as was this, but it was too far rearward. So I just brought all that forward and let the whole thing float to almost like a real stealth thin body form to the rear of the shape itself. So that helped putting that guy together. So now it's kind of put into place. Because that guy was there. Then I went to this. I went to elevation studies really quickly in terms of what does it now start to look like with this blended wing. Notice the difference how this really starts to take on some character. Real thin, stealthy looking thing with a blended wing coming up on top. There's a line here that's kind of deceptive. That was just a contour line to get me down to the rear part of the vehicle itself. That's the whole plate is this look right here, where it comes off that upper force in that section and drops right into the actual body form with an upper and lower wing system here. So very, very interesting in terms of finding different content altogether. It just had a lot more stream to it, a lot more guttural look, and much more exciting to work with. So that was another pass out of here. And then I went from there into maybe some additional studies here. What it might look like in perspective. Here was a really good example of what we were just referring to here. Let me just kind of get these organized. We were looking at in terms of there's that actual triangle, almost polar triangle body section, then it coming with that real hard line, and again that blended wing coming off the form, and then this lower piece coming out and forming that attack mode system that we were looking for. So much more intimidating looking. This is again back, maybe changed a little bit more of some of the shapes instead of being so crisp. It got a little bit of the triangular look here, but it was much flatter. It didn't have that blended wing look to it like it did, like this one did. So I went back and just kind of, that's okay. It's a study, and it told me that not this, but more of that look. Now let's go back to this one. This is a little really quick perspective study based on where we're taking this thing now with this generation. This looked a lot healthier in terms of, look at the difference in the character there. Just for a moment here, I'm just going to get this organized up on the plate. Look at the actual wing system itself, upper, lower, munition system, the Mokaran, the hammerhead shark eye platform, the intake system, the cockpit area, the wing, the lateral downturn dihedrals to give more fish-like look to it, so it kind of all together. And again, it's very crisp-looking, very upper solid portion here. And again, not to bring back the point, but look at the difference between that form, which is the new look we're trying to accomplish here, to this. No comparison whatsoever. This had a very soft look to it. Yeah, it was good for its time, but when I went back and looked at it, I thought, it's just not quite there yet. So this one really helped to put it all together, this latest study here. So that's where we are with this guy. And again, we'll probably refine some things along the way here for the final illustration piece, but it just really had some really interesting things to take care of in terms of a much more heraldic look to it, much more attack mode to it. And if you're watching, for example, I would appreciate some feedback on what you think of the shapes and the transference here from one form to another. I think we made some progress here, but your input has always been very helpful, and it'd be great to just see what you think. Notice there's a little bit of a section change here, just a little bit of a step down. The final piece is going to have more of that form coming right off and forming that wing, right off that blended wing upper. So there's no real shelf in there at all to work with. So that was a little perspective study. Then went back in and did some empathic sketches based on what does the gesture look like? Is it downhill or is it more uphill? Obviously, this is a stronger element right here. This one really began to crank on some things and make some really good sense as far as, again, notice the front piece and lower wing, and again, just for what it's worth, let me just do this for a second here. This would be the primary body form here. That comes in, that comes into the intake. This is where the blended wing is here, and what happens underneath is this. You get this intake piece in here, and then all of a sudden this wing overshadows the lower piece, and then this is where the munition system is on the upper and lower. So again, so much more formidable looking, I think, as far as the term I would use. It has a character about it that looks much more aggressive, as an attack vehicle should look, like a lightweight attack vehicle. So that's where that was. Then went back in and did some larger studies here. Again, notice it started to really get that blended wing look, and then that lower piece underneath it. Didn't show the munition system on this one, but it still exists. A very interesting piece to work with here. So let me just drop this down just a bit here. And this comes back. Let me drop this just a bit here. There it is. Those are two variations on the theme. This had a bit more of a drop nose to it, so I'm kind of maybe to take that gesture a little fuller down and through here and get that squared away, as is this one here. So a little bit thin in through here. So I might just take that shape through, put a little more body up front, but I think the overall gesture is definitely there with that upper and lower wing system really helping to kind of define the form. So that one is, again, about a week or two ago, just went back and did a larger study here to kind of give me some input on what this form is going to look like. And again, I think it does need to have some more guts on it. For example, if we took this lower piece, came back out of that line there, and then added some more guts underneath there, maybe a little stealthier looking, all of a sudden, and then take that kick up into the rear end of the thing. Now, this would be, again, maybe another blade that comes down in section where you've got the triangular form here, and then this might break out into that actual form itself where the intake is. So I think that's got some health to it as well. And what's missing, of course, on this one is an actual munition system. So this wing might have to come back and be a little more parallel here, and then come back out and kick into this. Then we add that munition system down and through here. So, but I really felt much more comfortable with this one. It was much more exciting to work with because the shapes started to come together. It began to tell a story. And I think that's the thing I was really interested in. The original Moricon study was to get that story to be told really well, and to make certain that we had a really good content to work with. Because I want to make my bottom line here is, when this is all said and done, part 2, going from the Moricon to the HS-108P, much more formidable and an interesting composition. So I'll be doing some real studies on composition for final artwork in full color in the next stream we put together, and hopefully we'll have some really good results on that whole process. But I would appreciate, if you are watching, if you want to send a note about favorites or likes and dislikes at jim@drcontrast.com, would really appreciate your input, because I want to make sure that the viewing audience is kind of on the same wavelength I am here with making the changes we had to much stronger. So let's get rid of that big sketch, put that out of the way. Then went back in, just for what it's worth, to do just real brief little studies here in terms of what that front elevation might look like. Notice again that upper wing comes off of the form itself, comes right off the top of that shape into the upper, into the lower munition system. little elevation there again, showing us with a little bit more. It's a little rounder in some areas. I probably want to go a little sharper with this and really crisping that off, so it's much harder and much more stealth-like to deal with. Then again, another elevation. Notice the whole polar triangle. That section study right there is extremely vital. I think that builds the architecture for the rest of the aircraft as far as what we're going to deal with it as far as the final piece. Then again, down below, a little more content in here. It's not so much of a droop to it. The upper wing, which is right here, it's going to outline that guy. This is the upper wing right here. And then again, coming off that blended wing, and this would be the lower wing underneath it, and the ammunition system in place. I think it's got some really strong character here. So I'm so far as it stands today, I'm much happier with the actual overall content, and especially this is it here too. That's the upper. This is the upper piece here, and then blends in, comes right off that shape, and just drops off that triangle, and gives you that wing form very easily to deal with here. So that was that guy. A little study here, and then last but not least, I thought, well, it'd be kind of fun to see what this might look like in another view here. So here's a rear 3/4, which kind of just like a half section study. Look at the difference in the character. I mean, this thing's got some really evil approaches to it in terms of the body content. Let's just do a little bit of contour here. Let's put this in place. Let's get that in place. Let's get that. That's where the body form is. This comes off of that, and then notice there's my center line, center line, center line. Notice how it breaks off, goes underneath, and comes underneath here. So what's missing in this form here? Let's get the shadow light source from behind. Let's put a little more cast shadow of that wing surface up here. And that's where that's going to fall. It's going to come back and give us that look right there. This little boulder. This is going to give me, let me rotate this just for a moment here. This is going to give me the shadow of the upper wing here, and then over the top of that lower wing. This will give me a little bit of contouring through here and through here. And with my light source coming up here, because of that triangular form, this whole half body form will just break right out. So let me just do this. Yeah, there we go. That'll come right out and do the following. There's my center line. Take it back in the cockpit, and then put a little bit of highlight in the cockpit area itself. That's where and then again, underneath here, a little bit of a bone line. And again, a separation here. And the content. And again, there's break here. And again, this comes up, breaks down, up, and then what's missing here, I'll fill the rest of the form here. But I thought that was an interesting view to see what it looked like. Hey, Shadowkin, how you doing, man? Oh, hey, nicely. Good to have you on board there, Shadow. I was worried about no one watching here, but thank you so much. Do you like what we're doing here as far as content goes? Pretty spooky, I think. Yeah, especially when you look at this. I hate to bring it back again, Shadow, but look at this. Just real quickly. Look at where we were. Look at that as compared to, let's put this up on top. Look at that opposed to that. Totally different character altogether. I don't know how you feel, but boy, I tell you what, it's good to have you on board, and I'm really glad you've taken a moment here to kind of chat and say hello. And let me get this rid of this stuff here. But I thought this view was interesting. I don't know whether I'm going to use this view as far as it's such a, if I connect, I'm going to finish the sketch here. I just want to put a real quick gesture together on this guy. And I don't know, let me ask you a question, Shadow. Are you happy with this look? Or should it be a little crisper looking, a little flatter looking, more triangular? Seeing this one step through a minute, yeah, just, I mean, I'm really happy with it. I mean, the overall content, I think, is there. I might do a little, maybe after the holidays, maybe do a little cockpit study in this thing, because I think the canopy there is neat, because what we're trying to get at is this. If that body form comes uphill, what that canopy is doing this. Comes back and forms that tail. It's got a pillar here, but it comes back and gets real slim. And then that picks up the tail section here. So we've got this coming together, and then this coming together, and a shadow line here underneath it. A bit of content here as far as reflective glass, and take that back. But again, maybe this kind of comes back and does this, and the whole canopy would rotate in that direction, a la F-35. So that would be kind of cool, I think. That's the rotation for the canopy. And that's kind of neat how that would work together, I think, here. That wing is good. It leaves room for types of weapons. Oh, okay, so you think that shape is good as far as the cannons are concerned, or should we go a little flatter? Because I thought about doing this, Shadow, while you're on the line here. Thank you for taking the time. Very different, very awesome. Okay, maybe this form here could look like this, where it's a little crisper. And then it comes out and it forms this conical shape down below. And then underneath transforms into that. And then pick up that little dihedral wing at the back of this thing. And then we can kind of come back in and pick up this. So this flat would create another flat, which would go into a round, and then into another round, and it gives you that kind of a look. So, but this whole thing would be much sheer. So it's this to this, this to this, that to that. Then the break would be right here. That would be the munition side. I think that might be a kind of a nice little resolve. Then again, this is flat. In the plan view, we're there, and then we can kind of serrate this guy. But that would be, I think, a much, then again, we can put like a breather in through here of some sort, a nacelle, a little bit of a change of pace for weapon system insert, etc. So I think that, what do you think of that shape? Okay, from the front. Oh, from the front? Now I got it right here. Hang on a second. There's the front elevation. Basically this basic character right here, Shadow. But again, that change, right, that roundness might go back to do a nice little, like a flatter system, a more rectangular piece. Does that help? What do you think? Yeah, so you like the rounder portion, etc. Is that it? Oh, great. Okay, super. Again, I love this whole idea. This whole blended wing on top and the split wing being, it's almost like a quadra wing, but a lot more aerodynamically effective, a lot more aggressive looking. So I think we're on the right wavelength here. Thank you for the input there, Chief. It really helps. But this is interesting how the canopy, for example, we can get that to roll here and get this surface to work. Bring this back. And then into that tail section comes up, darts right back into that double tail system here. It comes off of this bone line here into that tail system. So I think there's some real progress being made there as far as the surface goes. So I'm really happy. Yeah, it does get a little meat to it. You're right, the rounder system itself. So I think based on all that, Shadow, I really think that this whole look here is so much stronger. Let's kind of put a little bit more tone to this thing. Far side surface. Again, wing surface coming off of that. And I'll finish this perspective. I just think this view is so much stronger. Where was I? Oh yeah, there's a line that comes off of this too. It comes up and then breaks. So that does that. And this curls around. It gives me a little bit more of a stealth look to it here. We kind of put a pattern in stealth. I mean, there's so much more to kind of work with here as far as content goes. I think it just has some real interesting. And the intake is underneath the wing here itself, so that really helps. Really cool. So I'm glad you joined the forces here. Are you doing okay? I hope. No, just wait for a response here. That's kind of wrapping things up here. Let's get this wing in place. That's down below. That's down below. A little more shadow. I'll take this into play here. Take that shadow into play. I just think the whole concept looks so much stronger. Then we come back in behind here, a bit of tone to kind of separate one form from the other. That's just a little seam line. Take me through the shape to separate the form. There we go. Interesting how it all comes together. Yeah, I think this view, when I look at this view, Shadow, I think that would be kind of a neat composition for a final concept piece for the website. You think, for the store? I think that I love this because I've done everything like front 3/4 all the time. Maybe we do two. Maybe do a single front 3/4 and then do an attack process here with maybe 2 or 3 in squadron. I think that could really be cool. So I think it's finally, I think, has some real guts to it. I'm much happier with the actual content itself. Now, obviously, when we go back in and begin to put some detail together on this thing, we can start putting some little surface changes in here. Kind of maybe break that down just a little bit so that wind kind of nests in just a little lower, comes back in and gives us this kind of a look, so it's almost like a floater. That could be kind of cool too. So there's so much potential in this shape. I think it's something much more like, I mean, this whole thing took on a whole new personality when I got to this guy right here. I thought, man, that really changed things right there. That view, based on where we were from the past, from that to this, really kind of screams, much more effective. So really kind of cool to have your input there, Shadow, and I'm glad you're doing well. So let me just do this for a moment here. I think I'm going to wrap this one up here. This is basically today, just for me, a really good solid review about where we were with the initial Mocharon and then this new, what I refer to as HS108P, this new prototype for the final illustration. So I think we'll stop right there. This today for me was a real review, and I'm glad we had a chance to kind of go back and pick up some of the pieces. Just terrific. Well, thank you. I think, well, your input really helped too, because a lot of the conversation along the way, you had some input in terms of, sorry, Mr. Day, don't worry about it. I know you're a very busy man, Shadow, but you had a lot to do getting this thing back up to speed here and putting some real information on this guy. And I do agree with you. I think this is a view I'm going to really refine this view with some real good detail and get a good squadron put together for the website and the store. Hey, Andreas, how are you, man? Nice to see you. I hope you pick it up here, and good to have you on board. Hey, super. Yeah, what do you think of the new design, Valimar? You think it's a lot more aggressive looking? Let me just kind of go back and where I was here. So this is what one view I think that was really kind of telltale of it all. Yeah, this one. Here's another view from the front three-quarter. That's where we were. And again, now let me kind of hard line this in just a bit so it doesn't look like it's a floater out there. So that wing comes out over that, and that comes out over that, and there we are. There's the front three-quarter. Really quickly here in terms of putting it all together. That was a front three-quarter, and I'm gonna maybe close this up a little bit more so it's much more compatible with the actual Mocharon itself and the actual shape of the HS108P. So that is where we were, and you think that's a pretty good resolve there? Yeah, I think it's got a lot more character to it, and especially when you turn this thing around, Andreas, and look at the rear three-quarter. This has some real romance to it, and we're just doing some canopy studies and maybe some munitions outrigger changes to the actual gun system itself. I think it's fierce as well. There's any doubt. So I think the resolve here is to get this guy really put together in terms of a good composition, and then we'll start to look at maybe a final piece and get this thing into pieces and rolling it here. And if you have any other input at all, Terrace, let me know. And boy, I'm really glad that you're back on board here, and thank you so much for being a loyal viewer here. It means a lot to have you on board. It's just great to have people like yourself looking at this stuff and saying, hey, you need to try this or you have to try that. That input is great. It's really interesting how it all comes together. And as I said, today is more of a review. I didn't do a lot of sketching, but I will be doing some things here to kind of refine this piece and get it back in the library and do some really neat color illustration piece for the final study itself. And I do want to do this. I hope this is not an interference at all. I want to take a moment here before we wrap it up at the end of the day to tell you that last week was a very difficult day. Last Tuesday, very difficult day. One of the individuals we're working with, Shadow and I are working with down in the Carolinas, Doug Rutterling. We're doing a lot of slot car design. We were working with, we did the first Formula One piece. It's called the Stealth and Nighthawk, and also working on some LMP car stuff. And I spoke to him last Friday, a week ago last Friday, and said, how are you doing? He's going in for heart surgery, and he's doing really well. And to me, the tips you've given me on the channel, that's great, Valdemar. I'm really good at, and you're an inspiration to me as well. The feedback has always been terrific. So I really thank you for the input. Your comments are timely, they're meaningful, and I do not ignore them at all. I think that's really interesting. Thank you. Condolences. I mean, that guy was an absolute genius, and I was shocked. As I said, I spoke to him last Friday. He was doing well. I got a call from his wife on Monday, that following day on Monday afternoon, and they had to rush him to the hospital. He had experienced at home an intracranial hemorrhage, which was right in the heart of his the brain. It exploded, vessel broke, and destroyed his motor skills, speech systems, paralyzed him, got him to the hospital. The doctors called the family in about the following morning and said, "You better come in. We have got to help diagnose it." Yeah. It just, the family all gathered, and the last moment during his team's advice, come in and spend your last moments with Doug. They did so, and on Tuesday evening, December 2nd at 7:42, I received a note from his wife Pamela that he had passed away at 7:42. And I want to bring that up because I think it's significant that it's not about what I do. It certainly is not about me. It's about just great people that I've worked with over the years, and he was one of them. The guy was an absolute genius. Shadow knew him. He's seen his work. The guy was just a great, great friend, enormous talent. Did everything so well. He was a manager of TTI International for a long period of time, and just recently retired. Was enjoying. And he said to me when he left, he said, "Boy, hey Jim, Dr. Contrast, I finally get to design cars with you." We were excited about that, and we still are. But I want to bring this along as a tribute. This is what he did. If you have a moment, please take a look at this guy's work. This is the one we finished up. It's gone international. He's got some product work out there now. It's called Full Earth Workshop. And you're right, Shadow. The guy was absolutely huge passion with what he did. And this is it. I don't know if I can kind of bring the machine out here. Let's just see what it looks like. Open this guy up. I think I'll be able to get it out here. But this was the actual piece itself. There was a body form. I mean, that thing was just so cool. And again, if I can get this out of the way here, to show you what the guts look like. Look at the detail of the work he did. He did this all by himself. 3D printed it. The suspension he designed. Everything he did was just absolutely top-notch stuff. And we're just moving. We got this one done. We're just moving into an LMP car. And by the way, I'm going to bring that back into play again next year. I'm going to finish that thing and get it off to his wife and his son as a memorial to him. That was it. That was the guts he did. But with the actual body form, it's just absolutely stealth-like. I mean, look at that thing. 3D printed, did a beautiful job of it. And the later series, this has a little bit of a gloss look to it, but he put a finish on it and he sanded it down and almost like a flat surface of finish. So I just want to close it up by saying that I'm not ignorant of the fact that the people, what's made my career worthwhile are people like yourself, Shadow, people like you and Terrace, people like Doug Rurley. I mean, I could go on and on and on for days about the people I've had blessed to work with. I really have been. But the greatest passion of all is to have you guys on board to help me through the situation here. And I don't want to close this session on a negative note, but I want to pay tribute to Doug. His son watches the program. I want to give our best wishes to Pam and her family, their son and 2 daughters. He will live on in my memory for sure, because I've known the man for 40 some odd years. A great, great friend. And thank you so much for acknowledging that. And we'll try to keep this thing alive here. Stay tuned, because we're going to start doing some really cool LMP cars. We had some truck work being done. We were doing also, and I want to pick it up as well, the next generation of Tesla Cybertrucks, what it might look like. So all that's yet to come. And I just want to say here today that thank you so much for the time that you spent with me here today. This will be the final composition for the new HS108P prototype. Stay tuned here, and because of the holiday coming up, I don't think I'll be able to really get involved in some of the streaming work until after the holidays, so I'll keep you posted on that. And if something does come up with Shadow, for example, we'll work on some things, I'm sure. Hoping to see you before the end of the holidays. If not, we'll pick it up after the first of the year. But I did want to say this. Thank you again. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your input. Valdemar, absolutely. And Terrace, absolutely. Shadow, good to have you on board today. We'll get this thing put together. And again, visit my website, drcontrast.com. And also, Shadow, thank you for tuning in, and Terrace. And if you have any questions or concerns, and Terrace, about things I can help you with, systems, I know you don't need it, but if you need a little input here and there, drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com, and we'll kind of work it out for you here and just kind of work with you to get things taken care of. But I wish all of you very much the best. We'll be back in touch soon here after the holidays. And again, a great Christmas blessings to all. Merry Christmas to all. And I always finish with this. I think it's absolutely critical to do so. And man, it's very simple. Never forget to dare to be great. because you are. Thank you so much, gang. And HS108P is into its final stages now. Much progress being made. And I think we're going to have some lot of fun. I think this is the view we're going to work with here to kind of detail this beauty out and get a good solid composition, get into full color, and we'll start that then hopefully the next new year. And I've also got a list. Oh, by the way, too, Shadow, I just want you to know I've got a list of categories and playlists for what we've got. I've got about maybe 16 total. I've got maybe 5 or I don't know if you've got it with me. I think I've got about 5 or 6 categories and maybe 3 or 4 to each one. So we're ready to go here. Salute. Interesting. Thank you again. Just appreciate it. We'll get together before the holiday, I'm sure. And Terrace, thank you. All the best, guys. Take care and have a wonderful holiday. You as well, and Terrace. Stay tuned, because after the first of the year, we're going to come out of the blocks just flying. So there'll be some cool stuff to work with. And in the meantime, if I can get back on with, I don't think I'll have time to do so because of the family and the like. That's going to be some really neat stuff here. So we'll get some playlist work done. Again, all the best, gang. Merry Christmas to all, Ben and Terrace. Thank you so much for being such a loyal customer. I really appreciate and respect you. We'll be in touch. All the best, and take care. Thank you.